Zephan Blacksburg here with another interview for the Life Rescripted Virtual Summit, and tonight I am joined by Alex Barker. And Alex is a pharmacist by day and podcaster by night over at the 66 Day Experiment, a daily podcast focused on taking small, simple steps to create significant change in your wealth, health, and love. He's on a journey to make habits stick, and he walks people through how to maintain small habits that lead to big change. What's going on, Alex?
Man, I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me in this summit. I'm pumped.
Yeah, man. So tonight we are talking about overnight success and how it's a lie. And I think it's very fitting that actually before I jumped on this call with you, I actually just wrote out an email where 2 nights ago I was working with my tech genius guy who's been helping me put stuff together actually for this summit. So obviously we're recording this a little bit in advance. And I
Yeah.
took a photo because we were working until 3 a.m. and it's like our kitchen table, laptops out everywhere, drawings and ideas and the liquor cabinets in the back. And it really was like, I want to show everybody what goes into, making something like this happen and talking about how, everybody sees me and what I've accomplished on Facebook, but they don't really see that, every night for the last 3 months, I've been up till 1, 2, sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning working on this. And I'm sure you've probably experienced some of the same, in getting to where you are now. So I'd love to hear from you, what your experience has been and how we've seen some people out there that make it look like this just happened one day.
I think it's a perspective we all have that the media makes this into a big deal. Like they shoot out fancy headlines, things that say like one guy makes $10 million overnight. And I think it's very easy to get super jealous of these people who become these overnight successes when all in actuality, just like you, Zephan, they're hustling. They've spent, their nights right on their desktop, working on their computer until 3 a.m. in the morning, and people don't see that. And I think it's a lie that's ubiquitous throughout all of the online space, building businesses, and in the media too. And I'm definitely a champion to tell people, look, it's going to take hustle to get what you want, to work towards that dream. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's probably not going to happen the next day. But if you slowly implement things over time, who knows where it's going to lead to? It's going to lead to hopefully somewhere where Zephan is, right? That's why we want to do kind of things that you're doing, buddy.
Exactly. And so I wanted to bring up an article real quick because this made me think so much of it. And this is what we're seeing out there all the time. This article I shared the other day, just the title of it is Traveler 31 Becomes Millionaire While Exploring the World.
I've seen that one.
So they're selling the dream in the title. And what's even worse is that going into it, they don't even tell you how he did it. It's just more of like, yeah, this guy's got this business. He makes $1 million and here's all the cool stuff that he does. And so this has been really tough for me because I'm seeing more and more articles like this. And it's like the media is just selling us the success stories. We're not seeing any of the failures, which there are way more of than success stories, and we're not really seeing any of the struggle, which we know is such a huge part of getting all this stuff done. So maybe let's hear about your struggle, because I know that you've built up a side business. You've put a lot of habits in place. You've had this crazy experiment that I think might have even started with just 30 days and then it actually increased by quite a bit. So, where did that all start? Where was your desire for more?
I guess it kind of started with a 2-hour daily commute that I had. I had this job in the Appalachian Mountains, kind of like in the Virginia, Tennessee area. And I realized that I didn't really enjoy my job. So I started learning more. I started listening to podcasts. I started listening to Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn, who we both know. And I realized that I wanted to create a freedom lifestyle. I didn't really want to live the rest of my life doing a job where I'm trading my time for dollars. And that built a desire within me to create an online business. That was about 3 years ago. And since then, I've had a lot of failures. I've tried to sell things on Amazon and eBay. I've sold things like baby chairs and stickers And I've been rejected thousands of times with other things. I've tried to sell courses. I wrote ebooks. I coached people. I consulted businesses. And a lot of these things failed. And it wasn't until about 10 months ago that I've started to see an exponential growth. In the first 2 years, it was kind of just like this incremental change where I was continually doubting myself and thinking, man, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong? And just keep trying things. So I kept pushing and pushing. And like I said, 8 months ago, I've been starting to build this business where I'm making $4,000 to $6,000 a month on the side. It's not doing a whole lot of work. Now that sounds like a success story, and I don't want to sell you my 7-step plan on how to do that. I don't even know how to teach what I've done. But what I want to tell you that is it's a road, it's a journey, and it takes days, weeks, months of hustle. And that's not sexy. You don't see really popular headlines in the news saying Zephan has worked 120 hours a week and has built this business, and now look at him. They want to sell you, he's built this business, it's making this much money. But in the long scheme of things, where I've come from is building habits that over time have led to an incremental and exponential growth, not only in my personal life, in my happiness, but also in my business, which is what my podcast was about, the 66-day experiment. So for those of you who don't know, for the last 66 days, I read a book a day, I exercised daily, which I've never done before, and I also wrote daily. And I wanted to do an experiment trying to make habits stick. And that was season 1 of my show, which ended just a few weeks ago.
Very cool. So I have to ask, and this was kind of coming up as you were going through that. So you were explaining that, you worked for about 2 years, or well, the last 3 years, and then it wasn't really until the last 8 months or so where you started to see that. Was there a time, and I'm sure that there was, but I've definitely gotten to a lot of places where you were like right before the roller coaster is about to go over that hump, and you kind of sit there, and now I'm much more mindful about it, but I've gotten to these places where I'm like, I could give up right now, like
Yeah.
right here today, this minute, this second, like I could just be done with this and never go back again. And I could totally give up, or I could keep pushing, and something amazing could be within the next 24 hours or the next week or month or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like, has that ever happened where you kind of like, you can feel that moment, you can tell that it's there, and you just kind of have to make that choice of, I'm just going to keep going?
Yes. I just felt that last week because season 1 of my show had just ended. And I've thought about a week after, I've been thinking on a daily basis, what if you just give up? Like just stop this show. Just give it up and move on to something else, right? Pivot to something else and you'll be safe. I've learned after being in this kind of world of online business for now 3 years, I have seen and experienced story after story after story of these people who you actually probably have seen in these other videos where they didn't give up. They were people who kept hustling, kept trying, and kept pushing their thing and refining that process. And eventually it got them to where they are today. And the way, honestly, what I do now, you can't see this, but I actually have a board here where I write down these negative thoughts. I'm a firm believer that fear is like this amorphous blob and it doesn't take shape. It's always telling you to doubt yourself. And I find it best to really just take a nail and a hammer and drive it down on a piece of paper so that when I think it in my head, I can quickly identify it and think of all the reasons why it's wrong. Like, you should give up. for all the reasons I know I should give up, I have many more reasons why I should keep going. It's the emails that I get from the people who are inspired by my show. It is the ratings and reviews of my show, people who actually enjoy what I'm doing. It's the people who give me what I call dollars of appreciation, who pay me for coaching them, consulting them, that sort of thing. And I literally write it down so that I have a reminder to not give up, to keep pushing.
That's an interesting way to do it because I haven't heard anyone saying that they like write down the negative things. You know, everyone's got their vision board of like, you know, I'm gonna get the Lamborghini or this house or
Yeah.
whatever. But I would like your perspective on it because if there's any one like most important lesson that I was ever taught, you know, my background's in video production and photography. I think one of the first, I don't know if it was like a wedding or some sort of photo shoot that I was on, but one of the first things I was ever taught by somebody was that look at where the other photographers are at the event and do the opposite. And it's so funny is I now look at what is everybody else doing and I do the opposite. And any video that I've ever made, it's funny because you can actually see most of the time like the photographers, like if I were to film a wedding, the photographers are usually like in the back of the shot. Like you can see them opposite. But you're missing so many things from that other perspective.
Mm.
And so I think it, in a sense, makes perfect sense that you would write down the negative side of things because it's almost like a reminder or a motivator that these are all the reasons why you could give up. And so as long as you can train your brain to get in that mindset of like, here's the one reason why I could give up, and then give yourself like 10 more reasons why you're not going to. I think that's a pretty excellent way of going about it.
It's helped me. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So I'm curious if you're willing to just pull back the covers a little bit because people are hearing that you've built a side income of $4,000 to $6,000 a month. And one of the things that, you know, most of these articles don't do is they don't tell you how they did it. Now, I'm not saying any particular formula by any means. And like you said, you know, you don't really know how to explain it either. I mean, I would explain it as hard work for a long period of time. But just to show everyone listening in, you know, how this was made possible, do you have any insight as to just like what type of business you built and how that's worked for you?
Yeah. I want to share with you an overarching idea. You've listened to a lot of people who've inspired you to take action today, and I encourage you to do that. You take action today. Don't wait till tomorrow. Do something today. But the key quality that every successful person has is patience. You must have patience in this battle, this uphill battle, because if you have patience to wait and keep pushing, you will find that one thing that brings you happiness or money or whatever it is that you're after, love. You have to have patience and be willing to grind longer than anyone else is, because that's the story for me. That's the story of many of my friends who are doing these things. I'm sure that's your story as well, that you just kept pushing and you had the patience to say, I'm not going to indulge in Netflix tonight. I'm going to hustle my business. But to explain more of what I do, I have two sides of my business. I coach people and I consult on helping usually men build online businesses. I've had women in the past, but just it seems more like I'm attracted. I was about to say men are more attracted
Be
to me,
careful
but
with your words. I know you're a married man.
yeah. Um, so I usually help guys build online businesses more so in the like the coaching kind. They usually are coaching. And the other business I have is essentially content creation. Right now we're in an amazing world where people will pay you for your ideas, your written ideas. And I have a team of people that write for me. And I've essentially systematized my business now where I spend, and this sounds so corny to say, because I've heard it on other, podcasts and interviews, but I literally spend 10 to 15 minutes a day, maybe, working on my business. And that leads me to, my $4,000 to $6,000. But it wasn't that way in the beginning. I don't want to sell it that way. I don't want to spread the word that way. In the beginning, it was hours. I was spending hours every morning, 4 or 5 a.m., writing these things and figuring out a process behind it so that I could teach others. And that's where I am today. I spend 10 minutes, 5 a.m., working on my business, communicating with my team, and they do a lot of the heavy lifting for me, and it gets my stamp of approval. And then bada bing, bada boom.
You
It
go
just
off to
happens.
work.
Yeah. And then I go to my day job. Yeah.
That's very interesting and definitely admirable, and I too would be the first one to tell you that a lot of people hear my story and they hear how I had quit my day job in May of 2013, and the next words that they usually hear are either White House or House of Cards. They ignore the fact that I paid $11,000 that I didn't have in my bank account to hire a business coach, and that I worked my butt off, easily 80, 90 hours a week, if not more, to make it happen. And on top of that, I was self-taught on programming and making my own website because I didn't have the money to do it because I already spent any money I already did have on this coach,
Yeah.
and so all these pieces that went into it, and I had to buy video equipment, to start a video business, and that is not cheap. So, it's really great to share this with everybody, and I think that we definitely have a very unique conversation going here compared to everything else in the summit, because everybody else kind of starts off with how they got to where they are now, right? And all you really hear is the whole like six figures or $1 million or whatever business, or
Yeah.
I worked 10 minutes a day on it, right? And you miss out on everything else that went into it. Now, I have to ask you, because I'm sure at this point everybody's like, all right, well, I guess it's never going to happen for me. Like, how do you approach somebody who almost feels hopeless only because, it is a lot of work? And I mean, for me, I just ask, do you want it bad enough? Because if you don't want it bad enough, then you'll make an excuse. And if you want it bad enough, then you'll make it happen.
Mm. A couple of things, a couple of thoughts. The first one is when it comes to motivation, there's actually a lot of research that says whether you are motivated internally or externally will determine where you kind of end up with your habits, with your success in your career. If you're internally motivated, you're more likely to make a change, a habit, start a business, whatever that change is for you. If you're externally motivated, if you think that maybe someone would only love you more if you just had this, you're not as likely going to change. The first thing, like you said, the first thing I ask someone whenever I start, I guess, coaching them through this process is saying, why? Why do you want this? And then when they tell me what they think is their why, then I ask them why again. And then when they tell me that, and then I ask them why again. And it gets really annoying, like you're talking to a 3-year-old child, right? But the point is, after asking why so many times, it gets down to the root, the core reason of who you are, why you want to do the things you do. And once you understand that, you have a base, a foundation to build on for the change that you want. And for this, it's building a business. That actually comes from The One Thing by Gary Keller. I was going to pick it up and show it here, but it's underneath like 5 books. Oh, no, it's right here. I got 2 of them because I love giving away copies. The One
Very
Thing by
cool.
Gary Keller. This is a great read, and you should read it. Another thing that I tell people is start small. Don't put that fake pressure on yourself that you got to produce tomorrow morning. You've got to come with your award-winning idea the next day. The iPhone wasn't built in a day. You have to start with one thing tomorrow. And this is actually how habits are built. And the easiest way they're built is if you just start so insanely small that it's laughable, you're more likely to do it. When I first started on this process, I was reading about habits and about business, and I thought, this is so overwhelming. I was talking to people like you, Zephan, who were inspiring and motivational, and what I would have said back then, you've arrived. You are where I want to be. How do I even get there? And I realized, actually, I think it was probably a Pat Flynn episode that I listened to in his podcast. And the main lesson I got from it was just take one action, one simple thing. And if you get it done in 5, 10 minutes, great. Take another action, do another small thing. Maybe your first step is just writing down 5 ideas. James Altucher is a great resource for this. And he says that you should have a daily idea journal where you write down things that you're curious about, or maybe a business idea. I can't tell you how big my idea journal is. I don't have it with me now, but my idea journal has so many dumb ideas as I look back on them. But after writing out all my ideas, I came up with things that I could realistically do. And I came up with a business model that worked for me where I was. So to wrap up, I would ask yourself why 5 times. Literally write out, why do you want to make this change? Then after you write out your reason, why do you want that? And continue that process until you think what you come up with a core message. And then once you understand that, start so insanely small with your first action. Maybe there's someone you gravitated to in this interview series and you think, I kind of want to follow him or her and her business model. Then just figure out what the first step is and take it and celebrate. Round of applause. You did it. You took your first action. You did what 90% of most people can't do. I think I said that right. I had some double negatives there. But
Yeah.
you took the action of the 10%. Kudos. So that's what I would say to that person.
So I was looking here as you said that. I don't have it on my desk because it's over on another table across the room. And
Yeah.
I'm a little messy right now getting ready to pack up to head out. But I have little journal things that I keep around from time to time, and little moleskin notebooks. I just buy them in like packs of 5, and they're these little like 5x7 notebooks that I carry with
Yeah.
me. And I literally use them for everything from like I'm on a video shoot with a client and I need to take notes to like I'm in bed and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and if I don't put this idea somewhere, like I'm just not going to fall asleep tonight.
Yeah.
And it's funny how this all plays out, because the podcast was just an idea and it was in one of these books. I have to find it somewhere at some point, but like it really was this like, what if I showed everybody what I've been able to do with my life over the last year, and found a way where I could show it to more than just like my small group of friends. And then just like you're saying, there was this why in there, like why do I want to do that, and really break it down to the heart and soul of what's actually there. So it's very cool to hear you say that, because this was not something that I like consciously sat down and was like, oh yeah, Alex taught me this thing. Like I think it's in a lot of people's nature to do that naturally, and if it's not, you should make it a habit, because I think for me it came from someone recommended every day just write down little ideas that you have for like a month, and at the end of the month go back through and find like the 3 things that you wrote down over and over again, and that's what you should work on like at the end of that month. Like that's what should be next. And so I think it kind of came out of that idea of just writing it down. And I don't mean like pull out your iPhone and take notes. Like I'm sure you've done this too. Like the notes app on your phone doesn't work the same way. And your brain does something totally different when you actually physically write it down on paper. This was a huge challenge I've had too with writing a book, was I thought, oh, I'll just mind map this out on, some software on the computer, and being able to see it in this cool, shiny way with all these different colors is great. And I actually got paralyzed by it until a few days later. I literally went to Walmart and I got a giant sheet of poster board and I got a Sharpie, and I just sat down on my floor until there was no space left on that board. And I got so much clarity out of writing it out. And a lot of it was the same stuff as what I had put online, but it just worked so differently in my mind, and things just started to click. So I definitely see where that is super helpful. Now I have to ask, because I have heard, when I've been helping some people, that they get stuck. Maybe we picked this really small habit and we did it for the first 3 days, 5 days, a week, whatever. Like, I know when I've gotten into gym routines, if I get sick like 2 weeks into it, like I'm screwed and it's done for like the next month or two. So what happens when you get stuck?
Everyone falls off the horse. Everyone fails. That's just a part of human nature. What's really interesting in our day and age is that researchers are trying to figure out what is different about people who are champions versus what maybe some people would say the average Joe. What's different between an Olympian and then someone like me, someone who doesn't have a six pack abs? What's the difference between the random guitar player and a concert rock star? And what researchers have found in common with these people who are all stars is not that they had tons of money when they were kids. It's not that they had good grades. It's not that they kept their word, that they had integrity, that they had any advantage, except that they were what they called gritty people. They had grit, Grit. And they define grit as a passion and a perseverance for long-term goals. And what's interesting is, I'll shoot you a link if you put notes for this, but you can actually take an assessment now that tells you what your grit score is. But now you're thinking, okay, well, I'm not someone who has a passion or a perseverance for my long-term goals. I'm someone who quite honestly gives up. That's okay. You're in good company. I've given up tons of times with my long-term goals. But there is something that gritty people do to get back on that horse when they fall off. Do you want to go through an exercise right now?
Let's make it happen.
Cool. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
No, hopefully I don't reveal too much about myself.
Think about your most important wish or goal that's related to year of purpose. Okay? Just think about one thing that you want. This wish should be something that is challenging, but can be achieved with the next few weeks or month. Do you have something? Would you like to share it?
Yeah, so a big thing that I've slowly started to mention secretly on some podcasts that aren't supposed to be released for a month or so has been that I am working on writing and publishing a book called Life Rescripted, and it's essentially based around the idea of this summit, and about looking at your life like a movie, and picking out the parts of the script that you do and do not like, and making your life into what you really want it to be, and having that Disney ending in a sense.
That's awesome.
And so writing the book in itself has been a goal, but I want it to get in the hands of hundreds, if not thousands of people. And that's the bigger goal, or the wish is, I want tons of people all across the world to see the potential that they already had inside, and figure out how they can bring it out.
Let's pick a number for how many people you'd like in. Actually, no, tell me a goal for like 2 months from now. What do you hope to have accomplished 2 months with your book?
So, as crazy as it sounds, I want to have the first draft.
Cool. First draft of your book. If we had time, I would ask you to write this down. But my next question is, what is the best outcome of fulfilling your wish or reaching your goal?
I would say the best outcome would be that I get to move forward to the next steps of, sending it to an editor, sending it to people to get it ready so that it can be made a real thing, as opposed to just this thing that sits on my Google Drive on my computer.
Yeah. Now I'd like you to tell me about some obstacles that could prevent you from achieving your wish or your goal.
Uh, Definitely mental obstacles or just kind of writer's block in general.
Hmm.
Um,
So
Getting
let's just take writer's block.
sure.
Where does writer's block occur, and what time of the day does it happen?
Oh, is this like a trick question?
No, no,
uh,
no.
I would say that writer's block occurs. I mean, it's mentally. It's all inside. It's not an external thing.
Hmm.
Um, For me, it probably occurs. I'm my most productive between like 4 or 5 in the afternoon until like 2 o'clock in the morning. So I would probably get writer's block pretty much any time from when I wake up until about 3 or 4 in the afternoon.
Okay. What can you over, or I'm sorry, what can you do to overcome that obstacle? And I think you kind of said what you would do.
Yeah, I mean, definitely staying productive within the times where I know it would work better for me. And then probably just accountability, to make sure that even if I do have a day where nothing comes out, that at least, somebody or something was there to say, at least put the pen to paper.
Great. So what we've just done is essentially identified your obstacles to the goal, the desire that you want, and we've come up with a game plan on how to overcome that. That is what gritty people do, because people who have a passion, a perseverance for a long-term goal, like writing a book and making it a New York Times bestseller. I'm on your side, buddy. We're going to get it published. We're going to make it big. There's going to be 1,000 obstacles that are going to be in your way. People are going to reject you. The editor is not going to get your book on time. Not everyone is going to buy your book. Um, I don't know if you're going to go with the published route, but you may be rejected. If those things happen, then what will you do to overcome it? Because if you're like me, when I did my New Year's resolution last year, I said I was going to start exercising, and that didn't happen. I did it for 2 days. Count them, 2 days of running outside, and I gave up. And I can clearly tell you that I did not have an if-then plan. So if you weren't taking notes during that exercise, I encourage you to write out what's your most important goal related to starting a business. What would be the best possible outcome if you achieved that goal? What are your obstacles to achieving that goal? When do they occur? Where do they occur? And what can you do to overcome those obstacles? If you do this plan, it's actually scientifically proven. They've done this on students and athletes that they are more likely to achieve that end goal, that success goal that they have if they go through this really simple exercise.
That's pretty cool. So, I mean, there's definitely information that backs up that taking a few minutes out of your day to go through what we just did is going to make all the difference.
Yeah, I like research. So
That's awesome. No, hey, I can't knock that. I mean, that's great to see that there's numbers behind it. Um, this has been a pretty cool talk, and I know that we could definitely go on and on with tons of ideas, and I know we'll talk about way more things later. But I'd love, for you to share with everybody that grit tool.
Mhm.
Maybe they'll, if they can Google it, do you have anything for them to search for in particular so they could find that?
I'll shoot you the link to it. But
Okay,
if
cool.
I'm pretty sure if you just search Google grit assessment or
Okay.
grit survey, you would find it. The research is by a woman named Angela Duckworth,
Okay.
and she has a great TED talk, by the way, all about grit. I highly recommend you check it out.
Very cool. And then, so you have this podcast that just finished up the first season recently, the
Yeah.
66-day experiment. Tell everyone where they can find out more about that. And I know that you've got some cool stuff that you give away to people as well.
So my show was a daily show where I really talked about my lessons learned of trying to implement the habits that I mentioned earlier. You can check out the website at 66dayexperiment.com. And actually, I have a free tool on there that's called the Dailies. And it's the tool that I use to help keep track of the habits that I was implementing. And it actually was really important because on the days that I didn't do my habits, it made me think about, okay, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I get this habit accomplished? And it helped me create new plans, new things to try in order to make my habits stick. I think my main mantra on the show is that there's no such thing as a failed experiment. There's only feedback. And if you just let that feedback go into nothingness, like my New Year's resolution, you can learn from your mistakes and apply new techniques to make habits stick. Again, you can find my show on Stitcher, on iTunes, 66-Day Experiment. Season 1 just finished. Season 2 is going to be about rejection. So I'm really excited to launch that in middle of September 2015.
Very cool. Very cool. And so real quick again, what's the URL for that website?
It's numerical, 66dayexperiment.com.
Awesome. Alex, it's been great chatting with you, and we'll definitely stay in touch, and excited to see where the conversation goes after I hit the record button again.
Me too, brother. We'll see you later.